Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Tyler Staten. And looking at me now, in this suit, in this house, you might assume one thing. But where I started and where I'm going are two different worlds. I didn't grow up imagining I'd be sitting here today. I didn't grow up thinking I would be speaking to a youth advisory board. But every step I've taken, even the hardest ones, led me to a place where I can finally use my voice to help others. Right now, I live in a house that is quiet. I live with my adoptive parents. They're in their 70s, so it's pretty peaceful. You might hear a newspaper turning or a kettle boiling. Mostly you'd hear me typing on my laptop because I'm a student. But 10 months ago, my life didn't sound like this. 10 months ago, my life was a series of alarms going off inside my body. My heart never slowed down. I wasn't waking up, I was jerking awake. I slept with fear like it was a blanket I couldn't kick off. Every sound felt like a threat. Every day felt like a countdown. And what's wild is, you don't even realize how unsafe you were until you finally taste safety. Until you finally sleep through the night. Until the noise stops and you realize just how long you lived in chaos pretending it was normal. 10 months ago, my life was loud. It was chaotic. I was unseen by the world, but I was being hurt by the people in it. I'm here today to share a few lessons from my life. I want to talk about what it takes to survive the things that usually kill people. But actually, I want to talk about something else, something we don't talk about enough. I want to talk about what happens after the escape. Because surviving, that isn't the end of the rainbow. That's just day one of the real work. Before I get into the heavy stuff, I want you to know who is talking to you. I'm not just a former youth. I'm a paralegal student at Wayne County Community College District. I'm a business administration student. I'm an accounting student. I serve on the Student Executive Council. And I'm a student member of the Detroit Bar Association. And as you can see, I'm a guy who likes a good suit. I like to present myself with a certain style because for a long time, I didn't have a choice in how I looked. I'm telling you about my education because I view my past differently now. I don't just look at it as trauma. I look at it as a case file. I look at it like a paralegal looks at evidence. And the evidence says that the systems we have in place now, they need an upgrade. Some of what I'm going to share today is rarely spoken, but I'm sharing it because real change requires honesty, not comfort. I won't share anything without purpose, but I will be truthful. Let's go back to the beginning. My story started rough. My biological mother was 16, battling addiction when she had me, her first child, and then my younger brother and sister. We lived in a trailer park, and we were very neglected. The cops were constantly called because my siblings or I would be outside without clothes, running around the trailer park, unattended. There were parties thrown that a kid should never be at. And this is a hard detail, but it's the truth. By age 5, I was showing off to adults that I knew how to roll a joint using Play-Doh. And I want to talk about what that does to a kid. When you grow up surrounded by chaos, you don't realize it's chaos. You think it's the world. You adapt. You normalize things that should never be normal. And that shapes you. It teaches you to scan a room for danger before you look for a place to sit. It teaches you to read adults before you learn to read books. But it also builds something unexpected: endurance, the ability to survive what others wouldn't. That early adversity didn't just scar me. In a way, it prepared me. By the time I was 6, we were in foster care. I remember bouncing from home to home, my siblings and I being mistreated. At age 7, I was adopted by my siblings' grandparents, where we all got to grow up together. But trauma doesn't disappear just because you change your address. I struggled a lot as a teenager. I had ADHD, depression, and anxiety. and by 16, I was a runaway. I didn't run away because I was a bad kid. I ran away because I was going through a mental health crisis. I was confused. I was scared. And I walked out into the Michigan winter with nothing but a single bag. Now, I know everyone in this room knows the term youth homelessness. It's on your paperwork. It's in your mission statement. But I want to tell you what that phrase feels like. When you're 16 and you are alone, you aren't thinking about housing stability. You aren't thinking about policy. You are thinking one thing. Where can I hide? That's it. You become invisible. You try to disappear. But here's the dangerous part about trying to disappear. When you're looking for safety, you usually find a predator instead. And I need to be clear about how this happens. It didn't start on the street. It started on a screen. I met him online. Or rather, he found me. He didn't just wait for me to run away. He cultivated the idea. He sold me the fantasy that leaving home was the only way to find freedom. He listened to my frustrations, and he validated my anger. He became the one person who understood me when no one else did. So, when I finally walked out that door into the cold, I was running into the unknown, but I was also running right to him, and he was ready. He knew exactly what a 16-year-old on the run needed. I needed a ride, he was there. I needed a vape to calm my nerves, he handed me one. I needed a meal, he paid for it. I needed a place to sleep, he had a room. Looking back now, as an adult, the wrongness of it makes my stomach turn. A grown man coordinating the escape of a vulnerable teenager isn't a savior. It's a predator setting a trap. But you have to understand, at that moment, I couldn't see the wrongness. I couldn't see the manipulation. I just saw an open car door and a warm seat. I saw someone who was finally helping me. This is important for the board to understand about grooming. He didn't just grab me, he convinced me. People think predators snatch you off the street, but the truth is much quieter and much smarter. They study you. They watch how you move. They notice the hesitation in your voice, the uncertainty in your eyes. They know exactly which thread to pull. And for me, the thread was simple. I wanted to feel wanted. I wanted the world to stop hurting for 5 minutes. He wasn't offering affection. He was offering anesthesia. He saw my vulnerability, my mental health struggles, my confusion, and he weaponized it. He provided those basic things, but he attached a price tag to them. It wasn't kindness. It was bait. And then came the drugs. At 16, most kids should be learning a subject in high school. I was battling a drug addiction. And I want to be clear about the mechanics of this. He didn't use drugs to get me high. He used them to build a leash. He would introduce these substances into my system, get my body physically dependent, and then he would withhold them. He would do horrible things to me, and then he would leave me to withdraw. He would leave me shaking, sick, and in pain. And in those moments of withdrawal, I wasn't thinking about abuse. I was thinking about making the pain stop. So when he finally came back, I didn't see a monster. I saw the only person who could fix the sickness he created. I would run back to him just to feel normal again. And as soon as I did, he would treat me horribly all over again. It was a vicious cycle. He broke me down, let me suffer, and then forced me to beg for the cure. He taught my body to need him, even while my mind was screaming to run. Then he began using my body as currency. He made me have sex with men way older than me, men who had things he wanted. Sometimes it was cash, sometimes it was help fixing his car, sometimes it was drugs. I wasn't being trafficked because I was on a street corner. I was being trafficked because someone realized they could turn my fear, my addiction, and my homelessness into profit. And that vulnerability, that manufactured dependency, is how I ended up in a hotel in Romulus. I was being sold by a random guy I didn't even know. I wasn't a human being in that transaction. I was currency. People ask, why didn't you just leave the room? I couldn't, because I was barely conscious. I was given so many drugs that I couldn't even stand up. I was badly used. I was kept in a state of chemical twilight so I wouldn't and couldn't fight back. It wasn't a choice to stay. It was a physical impossibility to leave. Walking out of that hotel door, when I finally did, was the hardest thing I have ever done. It meant fighting through the fog of those drugs. It meant waking up a body that had been shut down. It meant deciding that even though I had been used like an object, I was still a person worth saving. This didn't happen because I was reckless. It happened because I was predictable. To a system that leaves 16-year-olds without safety, without digital protection, and without somewhere to go. When systems fail quietly, predators fill the gap loudly. But even after I walked out, the system failed me. When I came out of hiding, I didn't go straight into foster care. For weeks, I was rotated through youth homeless shelters, one after another, every few weeks. Each place had a time limit. Each place was full. And eventually, they started running out of places to send me. Living in youth shelters means never unpacking. It means learning the rules of survival over and over again. Who to trust, where to sit, when to speak, when to stay invisible. You aren't building stability. You're just waiting for the next move. And when you're a traumatized teenager, that instability becomes dangerous. Too often, there is a gap between shelter and safety. After a few months of rotating around Michigan, I was sent into foster care. I had to deal with the system all over again at 16. And this is where I need the board to listen closely. I saw how horrible young adults who had been in the system most of their lives were being treated by workers. Nothing they said, nothing I said, was taken as truth. Everything was automatically taken as a lie. I was constantly having to prove I was telling the truth. When I knew something wasn't right with my health, I wasn't taken seriously. I was laughed at. When you treat a victim like a suspect, you push them back toward their abuser. I want to be clear. I'm not saying the people in the system are cruel. Many of them are exhausted, overworked, burned out. But impact matters more than intention. When a youth feels dismissed, minimized, or doubted, the system stops being a place of safety and becomes just another risk factor. And at that point, going back to an abuser can feel more predictable than staying alone with institutions that don't listen. I also want to name something we don't talk about enough: being a male survivor. When you're a young man experiencing abuse, the silence is heavier. People assume you're strong enough to leave, aggressive enough to fight back, or somehow complicit in what's happening to you. There's this unspoken belief that if you were really being hurt, you would have stopped it, or that you must have wanted it in some way. And we have to talk about the stigma that keeps boys quiet. When a boy is trafficked or abused by a man, society tries to label it as sexuality instead of violence. And it doesn't matter if that boy is gay or straight, the stigma traps him either way. People whisper, they ask, well, maybe he liked it, or is he gay? They confuse sexual identity with sexual exploitation. That confusion destroys a young man. It makes him feel like the crime is his identity. It makes him terrified to speak up because he knows that coming forward doesn't just mean admitting he was a victim. It means opening himself up to judgment about who he is. We have to stop conflating abuse with orientation. Power has no gender, and neither does pain. When I was 16 and going through this, the people around me didn't know where to send me. Not because they didn't care, but because the options were limited. The system had language, pathways, and programs that were clearly defined for girls, which is incredibly important. Those programs save lives. But for boys like me, there were long pauses, awkward silences, shrugs, a lot of, we don't really have something like that. There weren't many shelters built with young men in mind. Not many trauma programs designed to help boys talk about sexual violence, coercion, or fear without feeling ashamed of their masculinity. Not many spaces where a young man could say, "I'm scared," and have that taken seriously. Where are the voices saying boys get trafficked too? Men can be victims too. Male victims aren't rarer. They're just quieter, because the world has convinced them no one will listen. So instead of support, what many of us learn is endurance. We learn to minimize what happened. We learn to joke it away. We learn to tell ourselves it wasn't that bad. Because when you don't see yourself reflected in the system, you start to believe that your pain doesn't qualify. And that silence doesn't just delay healing, it keeps abuse hidden. Male survivors often stay longer in dangerous situations, not because they don't want help, but because they don't see a place where help exists for someone like them. And when they do speak up, they're often met with disbelief, discomfort, or confusion, which reinforces the idea that staying quiet is safer. I want to be very clear. This isn't about taking resources away from anyone. It's about expanding our understanding of who needs protection. Safety isn't gendered. Trauma isn't gendered. And the need to be believed isn't gendered either. If we want systems that truly protect youth, we have to build spaces where all survivors can recognize themselves. Where boys are allowed to name victimization, not just survive it silently. And that silence is exactly what happened to me. He came back into my life all over again. Why? Because the system offered me nothing better. I was in an independent living home. It was supposed to help us get on our feet, but it couldn't even help anyone get a job. It was merely just another temporary holding place. I was facing a choice: stay in this holding place until I aged out, or find my own way. So, I eventually got an apartment with him just to get out of the foster care system. I moved in with him at 18. If there are any youth listening, please hear this. You should never just move in with someone you don't truly know just to escape the system, because that is how the trap snaps shut. And now I need to explain what that trap looks like. We talk about domestic violence, but I don't think people understand the day-to-day reality of it, especially for a young man. It wasn't just arguments. It was a regime of terror. It got to the point where even the most basic human interactions became dangerous. I'm talking about a simple hi or good morning. In any other house, that's just a greeting. In my house, saying good morning could flip a switch in him that led to a death threat. There was no logic to it. I could be washing a dish or asking a simple question, and suddenly the atmosphere would snap. 1 minute it's quiet, and the next minute I'm being told I'm going to die because I didn't load the dish rack, the white ray. You learn to stop speaking. You learn to make yourself small, because you realize any sound you make, even a breath, can be used as an excuse to hurt you. It started with control. Then it became physical. I remember being grabbed by the neck and thrown into dressers. I remember being strangled until I saw stars. Strangulation is a quiet violence. It doesn't always leave a mark that others can see, but it tells you one thing: I hold your life in my hands. And the violence wasn't just hitting, it was environmental. I remember waking up at 4:30 in the morning, getting ready for work, and he was in such a fit of rage that he broke my bedroom door off its hinges just to get to me. Think about that level of unsafety. You are 19, 20 years old, and you cannot even close a door? And when I finally found the courage to escape, that is when it got most dangerous. But before I escaped, there was a moment that changed everything. Last December, he used a car as a weapon. He rammed me into traffic and caused a collision that sent me to the hospital. Lying there, injured and shaken, I realized something with absolute clarity. If I stayed, I was going to die. Not someday, not eventually. I was going to die there. That crash didn't just free me. It woke me up. It was the moment my survival instincts finally cut through the fog. From that point on, I knew escape wasn't optional. It was necessary. At the beginning of this year, an opportunity opened. Unplanned, unexpected, and I took it. I left without preparation. I left without closure. I left everything behind. Clothes, furniture, my life-sustaining medicine, documents, years of my life. But I escaped alive. When he realized I wasn't coming back, he retaliated. He destroyed the apartment, smashed my belongings, spray painted the walls. It wasn't random destruction. It was a message. If I can't control you, I will erase you. I went back to the last place I thought I would return, my adoptive parents' home, the same place I had once run from. And standing there, with nothing but what I could carry, I made a decision. If everything I owned could be taken away from me, then I would build something no one could destroy. That decision was my education, chosen immediately, deliberately, and without hesitation. We tell victims to just leave, but we don't mention that leaving is when the predator gets desperate. When I fled, he didn't let go. He tracked me. He showed up at the place I was hiding, screaming for me to come out. His family members were texting me to watch my back. He threatened to buy a gun to murder me. I'm telling you all these graphic details for a reason, because during all of this, I was being tracked. And there was a technology piece to the abuse that we aren't addressing enough today. He was obsessed with surveillance. He constantly tried to erase the history of what he did. He would take my phone while I was sleeping and try to delete the photos of the bruises and the videos of the abuse. He wanted to wipe the evidence so that if I ever went to police, I'd have nothing. But he underestimated me. I learned to be smarter. I recovered files he thought were gone. I learned to hide evidence in places he couldn't find. I was fighting a digital war inside my own phone. And it wasn't just about evidence. It was about memory. Predators try to delete your reality. They delete your texts, your photos, your connections, to make you question yourself. Learning to recover that data isn't just tech support. It's retrieving a person's history. It's telling a victim, you aren't crazy. This happened. And here's the proof. But it wasn't just about erasing the past. It was about controlling my present. He had my location tracked 24/7. If I stopped for coffee, he knew. If I was 5 minutes late, he knew. My phone wasn't my connection to the outside world. It was his leash on me. That is why I'm studying cybersecurity today. Because predators don't just operate in the physical world anymore. They track, they monitor, they invade your devices the same way they invade your boundaries. Digital safety is no longer optional youth protection. It's frontline protection. Teaching a young person how to lock a door, but not how to secure a phone, is like teaching fire safety without smoke alarms. Until we teach vulnerable youth how to protect themselves digitally, we are leaving them undefended in a battlefield they don't even know exists. And I need to be explicit about what that battlefield actually looks like. It isn't just about someone reading your text. It's about someone owning your body and your image at the same time. When I was being abused, I wasn't all there. I was usually high, kept in a chemical fog so I couldn't fight back. And in that state, with my mind not clear, he filmed me. He coerced me into doing things that I didn't want to do, things that make me sick. He recorded every second of it. I was 16, a child, terrified, drugged, and trapped. But on camera, it looked like compliance. And that is the ultimate weapon of a predator. He used that footage to silence me. But he didn't keep it for himself. He shared it. He sent those videos to his friends. He passed around the documentation of my trauma like it was a trophy. I wasn't a person to them. I was content. I was entertainment. While I was suffering, they were watching. And here's the reality that I live with every single day. I still have those videos on my phone right now in my pocket. I don't keep it because I want to. I keep it because law enforcement told me I have to. They call it evidence, but they haven't moved on with the case yet. So I'm walking around with videos of my own exploitation in my pocket, waiting for a system to catch up. It is exhausting. There's a specific kind of heaviness that comes from fighting a broken system. Knowing you have the proof, but realizing the timeline for justice is slower than the timeline for your own healing. Sometimes it feels hopeless. You worry that if people see them, they won't see a victim. They'll see what the camera saw. You worry you won't be believed because you couldn't say no loud enough when you were barely conscious. But I keep them. I don't delete them. I stay with the fight even when I'm tired, because those videos prove I was there. And this highlights exactly where our organizations are failing. While professionals are still learning how to use email properly, predators are using cloud storage and high-definition video to broadcast our pain. The digital aspect of abuse is moving at the speed of light, and our system is moving at the speed of paperwork. But obviously, I got out. I survived. I'm still actively trying to press charges despite considerable pushback from the legal system. But getting out was just step one. Step two was rebuilding a human being from the studs up. Since turning 21 just 2 months ago, I haven't just survived. I have achieved milestones that I was told were impossible for a kid like me. But my milestones aren't just about survival anymore. They are about thriving. My milestones are my education. It is maintaining my grades while studying law, business, and accounting. It is earning my place on the Student Executive Council so I can lead other students. It is joining the Detroit Bar Association so I can sit in the room with lawyers and judges. It is earning my Google certifications in cybersecurity. For a long time, my identity was victim. Now, my identity is scholar. My identity is leader. I didn't just rebuild a life. I built a future that no one can take away from me. And sometimes, when I sit in a quiet study hall with my laptop open and my notes organized, I almost want to cry. Not because I'm sad, but because I remember the version of me who thought he would never get this far. The me who thought school wasn't for kids like him. The me who thought trauma had already chosen his future for him. Every assignment I submit, every exam I pass, every leadership position I step into is proof that I didn't just escape, I evolved. And part of being a leader means giving back. As a member of the Student Executive Council at Wayne County Community College District, I make it my business to serve the community. Just this past Thanksgiving, I had the honor of volunteering to serve the homeless and veterans at the college. Standing there, serving food to men and women who had served our country, seeing people who were struggling just to find a warm meal. It hit me hard. I looked at them, and I didn't see charity cases. I saw people. I saw myself. When I volunteer now, I see people who are where I once stood, and sometimes where I could have stayed. I don't see failures. I don't see the homeless. I see stories still being written. I still see battles still being fought. And I see strength in places most people overlook. My empathy isn't theoretical. It's lived. It's earned. It's carved into me. And I carry it into every room I walk into. So when I serve, I don't just serve people. I serve respect. And that commitment to service is why I participated in the sleep out for Covenant House in November. And I didn't just do it for one night. I slept for 2 nights. I raised money for the cause. I put my body on the line to make sure youth coming up behind me have a bed. When I pledged to do that sleep out, I didn't know it would snow. I didn't check the forecast or plan for the cold. But when the flakes started to fall that night, I just stood there for a moment. And I remembered. 5 years ago, it snowed the night I ran away. I was 16, scared, confused, and trying to find somewhere I belonged. There wasn't much with me. A backpack, a jacket that wasn't warm enough, and a heart that didn't know what came next. Homelessness wasn't always a street corner for me. Sometimes it was a seat of a car. Sometimes it was a couch that wasn't mine, a floor I pretended was comfortable, or a night spent walking into a morning because stopping felt too dangerous. I've known all of those. I've lived them. I remember how quiet those nights were. The world felt asleep, but I was wide awake, thinking about the kind of life I wanted, wondering if I'd ever make it. On that night of the sleep out, when the cold hit the same way it did back then, those memories came back. But they didn't hurt the same way anymore. Standing there in the cold reminded me how far I've come. I realized I was no longer the boy walking through the snow trying to survive. I was the man standing in it with purpose, choosing to remember, choosing to give back, choosing to grow. That sleep out wasn't just about awareness. It was about reflection. It was about healing. It was about standing in the same kind of night that once broke me and realizing that this time I was there by choice, stronger, steadier, rebuilding what I once thought was lost. I did that for the youth who are still out there, the ones trying to make it through another cold night, another uncertain tomorrow. But I also did it for myself, for 16-year-old me who didn't know he'd ever make it this far. And this brings me to a really important point about my generation. I read a study recently about what different generations value most. For past generations, when teens were asked what they wanted most, the answer was often to be popular or to be famous. But when you ask Generation Z, my generation, what we want most, the answer changes. We don't want popularity. We want safety. Think about that. We are growing up in a world where we don't feel safe. Not in schools, not online, not in the economy, and for kids in the system, not in our own homes. I am standing here as a representative of a generation that is screaming for safety. We are asking you to build systems that actually protect us, not just process us. Too many teens feel like they're going through everything alone. But when someone steps in and says, your voice matters, everything changes. My vision is simple. I want every young person to know they have a future worth fighting for. I want them to know their voice matters, their identity matters, and their safety matters. I want to help create safer spaces for youth to speak about mental health, identity, trauma, or whatever they're carrying. I want to help build a world where youth are not just included, but truly valued, where their ideas shape the programs that serve them, where their needs guide our decisions, and where they feel seen as whole people, not just statistics or problems to solve. When young people feel empowered, communities change, lives change. So, why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you this because I'm on a mission now. I'm at Wayne County Community College District studying law, business, and I'm taking Google courses on IT support. I go to the Detroit Institute of Art, or I sit in Kresge Court, or I visit the old churches in Detroit, and I study. I study because I want to understand the system. I want to know why the law works the way they do. I want to know how algorithms affect the poor. I want to know how we can use technology to catch predators, not just enable them. My goal is to transfer to the University of Michigan School of Information. I want to stand right at the intersection of law, tech, and ethics, because right now, there is a disconnect. The people building the systems have usually never slept in a car, and the people sleeping in cars don't know how the system works. I want to be the bridge. None of this is accidental. I didn't choose law because I like rules. I chose it because I've seen what happens when they fail. I didn't choose technology because it's trendy. I chose it because abuse now happens through screens as much as hands. And I didn't choose leadership because I want a title. I chose it because I know what it feels like when no one speaks for you. We can't keep giving youth band-aids for wounds that require surgery. We can't just create programs. We have to create pathways. We can't just talk about change. We have to build it. And you shouldn't be invited into these conversations just because it looks good. We should be invited because we have insight that can save lives, prevent trauma, and create a safer generation than the one we grew up in. If I could leave you with 3 things to consider as a youth advisory board, they would be these. 1. Build trauma-informed spaces for all genders, including boys, to speak safely and be believed. 2. Treat digital safety as youth safety. Education, device protection, and tech-aware casework must be standard. 3. Don't just consult youth. Continue to partner with them, pay them, train them, and let them help design what's meant to protect them. So, I'm asking for a seat at the table. I stand here today not because my path was perfect, but because I refuse to give up on myself. And now I refuse to give up on other young people. I am grateful for this opportunity, and I'm ready to use my story, my strength, and my voice to uplift others. I started this by talking about a quiet house. What that quiet house really represents is safety. And every young person deserves a life quiet enough to dream in. And I want to leave you with one final thought. I know some of the details I shared today were heavy. They might have even made some of you uncomfortable. But I want to be clear. I didn't share those details for shock value. If my story felt shocking to hear, imagine what it felt like to live. And imagine what I haven't shared. We have to ask ourselves, why is the truth so hard to hear in a room designed to fix it? The fact that the truth is shocking is proof that we have been silent for too long. If this room felt uncomfortable today, that is a sign. It's a signal that these are exactly the conversations we aren't having enough of. We cannot fix what we are too polite to face. So, the real question I leave the board is this. You invited me here to speak, but are you truly ready to listen? Are you ready to have conversations that don't just celebrate our survival, but confront the systems and trauma that almost didn't let us survive? I'm ready to have that conversation. I hope you are too. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a part of something that truly matters. Thank you.